Okay, so let's talk a little bit about forward chaining. Forward chaining refers to teaching a behavior chain beginning with the first step. Okay, have the child complete the first step independently and then prompt all remaining steps. Using the toothbrushing example, the child will independently pick up their toothbrush out of the toothbrush holder, and then all the remaining steps are prompted. Forward chaining is recommended if the child can successfully complete more steps at the start of a behavior chain and is typically a higher functioning learner. Forward chaining has the advantage of using behavioral momentum, as the first step is often the simplest and the easiest step. If I'm using forward chaining to teach a child to make French toast, then I would have a child get the bread out of the refrigerator independently and then help follow through with all of the other steps or prompt the other steps. Once the first step is mastered at an independent level, then move on to the second step and use our prompting hierarchy within the second step until that one is independent, and so on and so on. So going back to that toothbrushing example, right, I would again figure out exactly what all of the steps in my directions are, what our end goal is, and I would say brush your teeth, and I would pause and wait. I'd wait for them to do that first step independently of picking up their toothbrush. But if they don't do it, then I would probably use our least to most hierarchy, okay, or most to least hierarchy, and I would start off with maybe a partial physical. Maybe I would just touch them at the elbow towards the toothbrush, and if that doesn't work, then I would maybe point using that gestural prompt at the toothbrush. And if that didn't work, then I would probably use hand-over-hand guidance and help them pick up the toothbrush and then follow through with the other steps of putting toothpaste on, turning on the water, wetting it, putting it in their mouth, brushing their teeth, spitting, putting it back under the water, then turning off the water and putting it in the container, okay? So, unlike backward chaining, it doesn't give them initial opportunities to have full manual guidance over and over and over again through all of those steps until the end, right? So our learner is going to have to be able to quickly learn the steps as well as retain them. Retention is important, that maintenance, because frequently what will happen is you'll have a child who, let's take for example our Mr. Potato example, okay? So in through here we've got all of these steps, right? And so finally we're getting to the point where they're able to put the feet on and the eyes and the nose and the mouth and the ears, and we're onto the arms, and all we have left is the hat. But then all of a sudden I say, hey, go play with Mr. Potato, and he's distracted and he is so totally bored, or he hasn't retained the information, and he puts maybe the nose on first, which sometimes it's good because that speaks to a little bit of generalization, maybe because you've got to be creative sometimes when you play with Mr. Potato Head, but sometimes it's very specific, right? There's a specific chain and sequence, like if we were doing napkin folding. You've got to have that first one correct every single time. So again, you need to be very careful when you pick out exactly which chain is going to be appropriate for the learner, because if they're not going to retain that information over time, then maybe that backward chain would be a more effective teaching procedure for them. Okay, so again, I want you to go into the document section and find the napkin folding task analyses and watch the video that includes the forward chain and exactly what that looks like with taking data, okay? Because whereas over here in our napkin folding chain, we had initially all of these being full prompt. Instead, these are going to be full prompt for the first 3 trials, but then these are going to start being least, most to least, okay? So I'll give you a brief example. Let's say the first 3, again, we'll do that 7-Eleven. And our prompt here is going to be step 1, full prompt, 1 full prompt, 1 full prompt. So that's key though, right? Because it's step 1 that is full prompt. Whereas here, it was step 2. So step 1, full prompt. And then obviously with these, we do full prompt for the remaining steps because we're targeting the first steps for independence first. So then, across 3 consecutive days, we got that. Then we're going to go to step 1 again, remember, because we're dealing with first steps in independence first. We're going to go to a lesser intrusive prompt, which is going to be our partial physical. So then I would go 1 pp, 1 pp, 1 pp. Okay, so then hopefully our individual gets a partial prompt plus, and then obviously no matter what, again, we're going to do a full prompt here because we're not letting them make errors in the rest of those steps that go down, because this is a forward chain. So these beginning steps are the ones where we're going to be looking for independence with, okay? So our independence is going to go that way, whereas our independence with our backward chain went backwards, went from the bottom up. Okay, so you see the difference? All right.